Alex Hogan is live at the Schneider Children's Medical Center. That is near Tel Aviv. This is where the women, the children released who have spent more than 40 days now in captivity in somewhat unknown conditions. We can imagine, of course, and some government officials have referred to underground dungeons, for instance. So very tough circumstance these hostages have certainly suffered. And they're headed really in your direction and to see those doctors, their facility. What do you know right now, Alex?
Hi, Molly. So yes, this is the Schneider Children's Facility where we know at least some of these children will be brought. They'll have their own separate wings, so they'll be away from other patients. They'll have a little bit more privacy, and that was where they will finally reunite with their families, their loved ones. Again, it's been nearly 7 weeks. I've talked with a lot of families in my time out here about how traumatic this has been. This has been a nightmare for those who are here, wondering every single day what their loved ones have likely been through in the last 7 weeks. Of course, when we're talking about what these hostages have lived through and the physical conditions that they likely are in. I talked with one expert a couple weeks ago about how living underground and just the long-lasting effects that would have of not being able to see sunlight, being malnourished, having dehydration issues on top of the psychological issues. So all of these children will have access to a therapist as well as plenty of doctors in this facility behind me. But right now we can take a look at this live broadcast that we're able to see. Egypt says that it is preparing to receive those hostages, and through negotiations, we're also learning now that Egypt's mediation efforts have reportedly yielded the release of an extra 12 hostages. These are Thai nationals. So we know in the October 7th attacks when Hamas came here to Egypt, not only killing about 1,200 people, as on top of all of these hostages that were taken that were Israeli, a lot of foreign nationals as well. There was a large percentage of Thai foreign workers who were in that part of southern Israel working in the fields, and they were a big part of the people who were taken. So several weeks ago, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, when I was here, we saw a lot of the hotels here in Tel Aviv completely full with Thai foreign nationals. They were then able to go back to Thailand. There were big charter buses that would come pick them up and take them to the airport really throughout the day, throughout the night, until most of them had gone home. But they, of course, had many hostages that were taken that were Thai nationals. So those Thai nationals reportedly now, through this new brokered negotiation, are among those who have been released. And we did hear from the Thai Prime Minister on social media saying that there's official confirmation that those Thai workers have been released from captivity. We'll have to wait and see what their condition is. There's likely a lot of negotiations being brokered right now and conversations about how to get them back to Thailand as quickly as possible so they as well can be reunited with their family members. But that is completely separate from the 13 extra people that we are likely going to see, many of them, again, children that will be here at this medical facility. So we have been seeing people coming by, honking their horns, a lot of people here who are eager to see what is going to happen and give the support to the families who have been waiting for so many weeks, Molly. Right now, there is also Benny Gantz, who is one of the ministers here in the country, who's speaking to some of the families at this same gathering that we typically see, families gathering in this central square, protesting, calling on the government to do more. There is a lot of hope today that this will all come to fruition. We haven't received the official word yet that these 13 people have officially crossed. There was hope and expectations that among them, in this group of 13, there could be those 3 expected dual citizens, U.S. and Israeli citizens, who could be released, including a 4-year-old girl. Today is actually her 4th birthday, but she reportedly is not among those 13. Molly.
Alex, you've covered a lot of great ground for us there as we continue to watch this key crossing, the Rafah crossing there. We're seeing a lot of movement, a lot of people. We've been watching the vehicles going in and out. Yeah. But as you noted, we don't know precisely where these hostages are, how the exchange, how far along things are going in the process. One of the things you talked about a moment ago was the mental health aspect of all of this. Of course, these hostages are getting out. They're going to need physical and mental help. You've talked about just the capacity, what it's like to be held underground. They also have information that authorities may want. They want to talk to them and maybe get some idea about the other hostages that are being left behind. But I suppose they need to be fairly delicate about that, particularly with women and children that have suffered so much recently.
I think that's going to be the first focus is reuniting these families who've been in such emotional turmoil over these weeks. But after all of that is said and done, these reunions, we likely won't hear any comments from the families today because of course, the celebration of getting to return and see your loved one once again. But after that, yes, there will be an all-hands-on effort to try to comb through whatever memories these hostages can pull together about what they saw, where they were they all together? We know that these 13 people who are coming back were all from the same kibbutz, the same little village, right? Somewhere we're expecting it to be along the border if they were all from the same village, because those were largely the villages that were attacked. Now, in terms of what that means, we can also potentially deduce that it was a better than hoped experience for them. If these 13 people were all from the same village, maybe they were together during these past 7 weeks, that of course would be a much better situation than had they all been separated. That's not necessarily to say that that is true. They could have all been separated for these 7 weeks and then reunited for them to be now brought through the Rafah crossing. But that will be a big question for some of these investigators today of what's likely to come.
Absolutely. And that's one of the hope that so many of the hostage families had in their hearts, that fathers were still with their sons, that mothers were still with their babies, all of that. And you're absolutely right. That's one of the big questions that we all want to find the answers to. Alex Hogan, thank you so much. A historic day there on the ground in Israel, and we'll be coming back to you later, of course. Thanks for the reporting.